Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. My name's Aaron. Thanks for tuning in. Today I wanted to just talk about how to do a really super basic arrangement of chords and melody together. So just wanted to use this Christmas tune, "O Come All Ye Faithful," since we're in the holiday season here. Before I get started, make sure you check into the description, and there's free tabs on my website, so you can hit that. Please like and subscribe. That always helps me out. I greatly appreciate that. And if you want to do a private Zoom lesson, please hit me up. Again, my email's in the description. So, okay, with all that out of the way, let's get started here. All right, so the basic rule that I want to get out to you guys is if you, the melody, we want the melody note to be the highest note in the chord. So if I have this melody like this, so let's take the beginning, this note here. This is a C note and it's on the second string, okay? Everybody knows when you play like a C cowboy chord, we can play the first string open, right? So, okay, you hear that E note on the first string? But that's not the note we want. We want the melody note to be the highest. So the note on the second string, okay, is going to kind of dictate how far we strum through that chord. So when you use a C chord, you're only going to strum up to the melody note on the second string. Here's an example. Okay, see that? I stop so that the melody note's on top and it rings out. Okay? What I don't want to do is this. You can hear right away that we've lost the melody. It gets buried underneath this high E, okay? So that's going to be kind of our general guideline as we work through this. We're gonna take whatever the melody note is and put the chord below that note, okay? So in measure 2 we get up to the G7 chord. Once again, here's the C. Then we have this D note, and we're going to play a G7. Now everybody knows, again, cowboy chord wise, we have a G7 like this, but this puts an F note on the first string. It blocks this melody note D we're going for on the second string, okay? So what we have to do is figure out how to construct this G7, but get all the notes below this melody note. Okay, so the simple answer is we're going to just take this F, we're going to end up putting it down the octave, and you end up with a shape like this. So this is a G7 chord here. Okay, it gives you a G, B, an F, G, and then D in the melody on the second string. Okay, I'm going to back up again. I'm going to play the C. So. Alright, so you hear that I didn't play the note on the first string. Again, I'm supporting only up to the melody there. Okay. Again, if I use the like standard G7 that people are kind of used to, listen how this is going to obscure the melody. You know, we don't want that note, okay? So one more time, we have C chord, this modified G inversion. Okay, then we're on to a C again. This is the cool thing now with this C shape in the third measure, the open E is the melody note, so we can strum right through the whole chord. So I played the chord and then played these other melody notes, this E, D, E, F. There's the E again, and then we're going to go back to a G7 chord with the D in the melody, so we're going to use that same modified G7. So far we basically have a C chord and then this G7 voicing that maybe you've never played. And again, this voicing supports the note D on the second string. So here we go all the way through. Okay, now we get to a D7 chord. We've got this C note again, but we need a D7 chord. And again, you can hear that D7 chord obscures the melody note on the second string because it's got a note up here on the first string. We want D7, but we don't want this one because we want the second string to be the highest melody note. So we're going to take this F sharp, put it down the octave, and we end up with a new voicing for D7 that gives us our melody note on top. That's what we want every time. We want a voicing that gives us the melody note on top. All right, so this will be a new D7 shape for some folks. So back to the beginning. C chord, G7, new voicing, C chord, G7, here's this D7 inversion. Okay, then we're going to go on to a G chord. So let's look at that. We got a G chord with a B note on the second string in the melody. Okay, again, I'm not playing a G chord with this note on the first string because that would obscure the second string note. Again, we want B, C, D, E. Okay, so I'm using a G chord, but I'm not using the highest G note here because I just want the open B on the second string. Okay, here's a D7. This one's a little bit different too because we have an A note now on the third string. So we're starting to not have a lot of room below to make the chord, but I can put an F sharp here and a C here. Whoops. That gives me the A on top on the third string. Okay. And then we're back to a G chord now with an open G on the third string. So I hope you're hearing what we're doing here. We're just, supporting the melody with a chord inversion below it. We're not going above the melody with other chord tones, okay? Here's the next part. So this would be a C chord with a G up on top. Now look at this. This G7 in the beginning that we didn't use, we can use now because we have an F in the melody. Okay, right there in my first finger. And then the C chord gives us the open E in the melody. Then we could have a G chord only going up to a second string D here. Reuse this D7 inversion. Then a G chord without the first string. C chord only going to the second string, playing the melody. C chord going to the first string, the open E. Here's this newer G7 thing we did with the melody note on the second string. Here's an F chord. Look at this. This F chord's going to have an F in the melody, so that works out nice. Back to this G7. Here's that G7 again. Okay. So, this, you have to be a little bit more accurate here as to which strings you're strumming up to. But this is just a general way to make a chord melody solo with chord shapes and melody notes. You want to know your melody, of course, and you want to know how to support the melody with the chord underneath. All right, there's plenty of other ways and variations and things you could do to make this more advanced or more colorful, etc. But just keep it simple and try to get block chords underneath your melody notes. All right, I hope that helps everybody. Thanks for tuning in, and I hope you all have a good holiday. Bye-bye.